you typically you'll make progress like in this area, 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 but then there's still this like last little bit that's just like I just can't keep this dog under control, right? So, listen, obviously when we're dealing with these like 0.00001% reactivity cases, there are definitely times that you're going to be limited as far as how far you're going to get with it. But there's usually adjustments you can make to help get you even a little bit further with stuff, right? So we started implementing kind of some different techniques, right? Like we start implementing, because the dog, like if you look at its different like reinforcements and how motivated it is by it, right? Leash, not very motivated by. E-collar, very motivated by when not ridiculously stimulated. Food, pretty much always motivated by, right? So food at this point with this dog really is its primary reinforcer. And we implemented a lot of food in the past with the dog, but not to the degree of like we are going to lean 100% into this food, right? So we started taking an approach where we basically are implementing almost like a force-free reactivity protocol with stuff, right? So you get into like a lot of force-free trainers talk about like the BAT-CAT system, which is like, again, I always fuck this up every time, but it's like behavioral adjustment training and like conditioned association training or something like that, which is basically the process of like changing the dog's association with things and stuff like that. So we started implementing that to use in conjunction with the balance side of things and some of the corrections with stuff. So we started off, we did a couple of sessions with the dog, or I should say we did one session with the dog. I did one session with the dog where we got the highest value treat that we could freaking find, right? And we started at the facility and we started bringing dogs around. And basically how this technique works is you start off by reinforcing the dog anytime they look at the trigger, right? So look at the trigger, good, boom. Look at the trigger, good, boom. Look at the trigger, good, boom, right? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to recondition the dog's association of when you see the trigger, look to me for a reward, right? Anticipate looking to me for a reward. As you're getting success with that, you start switching to dog sees the trigger, wait for them to look at you, boom, reward. Dog looks at the trigger, wait for them to look at you, boom, reward, right? So we implemented that for one session and basically said, let's take this e-collar and let's push it to the side for a minute, at least as far as corrections around the dog, because what we were finding is just once he got into this crazy overstimulated state of mind, it just wasn't getting us anywhere, right? It was truly just amping him up then at that point, right? So we were like, let's use the food reinforcement to bring him down to a more manageable level so that we could then re-add back in those firm corrections and then suppress that last remaining bit of things to get him down to a manageable level. And what we saw over the course of one session of doing this was a crazy adjustment in behavior where a lot of situations were really starting to improve. And basically she was, for better choice of words, able to at least distract the dog from reacting at other dogs. Again, it didn't fix the problem by any means just yet, but she was able to keep him from escalating to this point where he was full on lunging and pulling and screaming and going bananas, right? So then we did our second session yesterday, right? We went out for the walk and we started off doing the exact same thing, right? So implementing the rewards for seeing the trigger, then disengaging from the trigger. But then what we started doing is we started adding in another criteria that we were going to start punishing for with the e-collar, right? Which we chose just simply if there was any tension on the leash, right? So if he pulled towards the trigger, right? Did that, gave one or two corrections, saw that then him actually respond to those corrections in a more successful manner as opposed to it amping him up because he was in a much more reduced state of arousal. He was actually able to bring his arousal down even a little bit more, right? Which was cool. That's obviously the point of the correction. But the problem was before he was just too stimulated for that to work, right? So continued working with that a little bit, right? Then we started adding back in a little bit more of a criteria like a downstay, right? And we were able to pass a couple of people, a couple of dogs, implementing a downstay, correcting if he wasn't holding the down, and then stabilizing that downstay with the food with the same kind of principle of let's keep his attention on us, and saw a lot of progress from that as well, right? Now, when we get into dogs like this is an important thing, right? Is as trainers, what makes us good is two things. One, that we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, right? So that technique we implemented with just the food, again, it's kind of more of a force-free approach. A lot of trainers from the balance standpoint don't really implement it in that specific of a fashion, or they don't do it like standalone without any sort of corrections or anything like that. So we have all of these different tools at our disposal that we could implement. And then additionally, we're able to successfully look at when our standard program is not working for a situation and make adjustments and pull from those other toolboxes, right? So that's exactly what we did, obviously. We saw, all right, we've kind of capped out at how far we're going to get with things, right? We made some progress here, but like we're plateauing out here. What sort of adjustments can we make? And can we give those adjustments enough time to see the progress from it, right? Because even that approach, right, isn't going to work right off the rip 100% from the standpoint of like, all right, well, we're going to implement this approach with the food, and I expect to see as soon as I start implementing it that it just fixes the problem.
Yeah.
It obviously doesn't work that way, right?
No.
We're kind of trialing things out and taking it week by week of like, all right, we're going to implement this technique, and I want to see after a week what sort of progress are we seeing with it. And then if it looks like we're moving in the right direction, all right, let's keep plugging along that path that we create. If we notice that, again, we're plateauing out with certain things as far as that, but maybe it got us a little bit, then we pull from another tool in the toolbox, right? And we start working down that road. And that's the one thing that I like is when we get kind of challenging cases like that is when we hit that point where we really do need to experiment a little bit and figure out what the right approach is, right? Similar to, everybody's heard us talk about Hank, the Rottweiler, who was also one of those like 0.0001% reactivity cases. And, he had a similar situation, right? You can actually go read his owner's review on Google, right? She did a board and train with us, went home from the board and train, made a lot of progress, still had that last little bit that she was just not getting any headway with. And it wasn't due to lack of trying or anything. And we needed to experiment a little bit, try different things, right? We wound up figuring out a different way to correct for him, right? The bonker wound up being very effective with him. And that, in combination with once we suppress the behavior a little bit more, adding in the food rewards with stuff, wound up getting him the rest of the way that we needed to get him there, right? The problem is, in Hank's case, he was still responsive to correction, just a different type of correction when he was overstimulated. This dog, not the case, right? Like bonker, e-collar, leash, pet corrector, anything like that. Just when he was overstimulated, he was overstimulated. You were not getting anywhere with it, right? So we had to figure out a way to, again, keep that arousal a little bit lower, right? So that we could then correct while he was in a less aroused state of mind. So we were leveraging all of our reinforcement really effectively with stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been another interesting case. I'll be really interested to see over the next couple of weeks how that dog does. It's tough, obviously, because a dog like that needs a lot of exposure to stuff. But like with the weather the way it is, you only get so many pass-bys. Like yesterday, we did a 2-hour session because she drives up from Kent, which is like an hour away. And I think over the course of those 2 hours, we saw 4 dogs maybe, which is good. I mean, we got good practice in still, but it's like it was not like in a summer day at Edgewater, we'll see like 40 dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a lot of progress. But honestly, the other side of things is like that could work in your favor sometimes because you're not totally flooding and overwhelming the dog initially with stuff. You could have like one pass by, and then we were able to have like 10 minutes of just like decompression, walking, him doing well, stuff like that. Then it's like, all right, here's another one. We work through it. Then a little bit of time to just chill and everything. And that's another interesting one we've been working with.